Andrew, I'm going to come on to you with the question of understanding like these different generations and the approaches that you have to have with them. Being based in the Middle East, obviously the approach might be a little bit different. Can you give us a bit about that?
Yeah, so I've worked in the Middle East for 16 years. I've been supporting companies like Pizza Hut and Hilton and some of the big sort of like retail brands in the Middle East, IKEA. Currently, I'm with Etihad and spent a considerable amount of time with Starbucks as well. We've been working in Russia, Turkey, all over the Middle East with that as well. And I spent quite a lot of time in Australia with P&O as well on kind of cruise ships in the Merchant Navy. So I suppose I think the interesting thing is here, there's 5 generations at play. That's the first time. So I think for the first time in human history, there's definitely 5 generations. So that's really, really interesting. I think definitely the generations entering into the workplace, the way that they want to learn information from us has changed quite radically. So there's been this real shift. One of the big challenges that I face, we face as an organization, and the organizations I support faces, is really the idea that, traditionally, perhaps, X generation, myself included in that, quite like a traditional, ILT face-to-face workshop. There are some major drawbacks on that. I mean, we've definitely found during the last couple of years, particularly with, events forced upon us, that was a huge change in how people kind of went about their learning. I look at how my daughter and my son typically learn now. They're in their they're millennials or Generation Z, and they have a very different way of learning. I think what's really interesting for me is the way that they're able to sort of like help me with my learning. And so a lot of kind of reverse mentoring, particularly. But they also like this idea of kind of micro learning. So watching how to do something. So in fact, I mean, I've been married for 29 years, and at the weekend we were celebrating, and I was watching my wife how using curlers. And it sounds a bit of a crazy thing to say, but if you think about how even she now, she's currently in sort of mid-50s, and how she's basically learning to curl her hair. She's learning to curl her hair by, literally YouTubing or Googling how to use Babyliss hair curlers. Other hair curlers are available. And she's watching and she's pausing. And I think there's a really interesting point there, because I think there's less of this requirement to actually retain knowledge now. There's more of a requirement to be able to instantly find something and actually use that bit of information almost instantaneously. So I think the way that we kind of catalog information, we kind of present information, we keep it really, really short. And it's crazy. A lot of the data that we kind of know now, most people make up a decision. You probably turned off already, because about 5 seconds after someone starts speaking, they decide whether they want to listen to the entire 1 minute. So that first kind of 5 minutes or first 5 seconds of a conversation is really important. I spoke recently at the House of Lords and the House of Commons in the UK, and they were very interested in this kind of like idea that we could, really sort of like reduce the amount of time into these kind of, I call them gobbets, but probably not appropriate language, but very, very simple micro messages. So if someone wants to improve their active listening, or they want to conduct maybe a performance conversation, or they want to curl their hair with the Babyliss curlers, actually they can quickly, instantly find that information and use that as a kind of a library, as a reference point. So there's kind of always 4 things I really kind of focus on, which is someone wants to learn something. That's very, very powerful. And I think my job isn't really in trying to make them want to do something, because that's a personal decision. My job is very much around making what they want to learn accessible, easily findable, and just very easy to kind of get hold of, on their phones or on the way they want it. So there's a big shift away from this kind of like very traditional classroom workbooks to a much more easy, simple, micro kind of learning approach. So hopefully that gives you some insight into what we're trying to do.
Absolutely, Andrew. That's brilliant. Thank you very much for that.